Arizona Territory, 1875. The merciless summer sun beat down upon the parched earth, baking the red clay into a hard crust that cracked beneath Logan Paxton's boots as he rode through Rattlesnake Canyon. At 25, Logan had already spent 7 hard years on the frontier, his youthful face weathered by wind and worry, yet still handsome enough to turn heads in the few towns he reluctantly visited. His lean, muscular frame sat easy in the saddle, his wheat-colored hair peeking out beneath a well-worn hat, stubble just beginning to shadow his square jaw. "Keep moving, Diablo," he murmured to his black stallion, patting the horse's sweaty neck. "Water's not far now." Logan squinted at the horizon, where heat waves shimmered like ghostly dancers. The canyon walls rose around him, offering scant shade and too many places for ambush. That thought kept his Winchester rifle close and his eyes vigilantly scanning the ridgelines. A man traveling alone in Apache territory was either brave or foolish. Logan considered himself neither, just practical. The lone wolf survives where the pack falls, his father had taught him before dysentery took him at the goldfields. Logan had carved that lesson into his heart, building his life around a simple truth. Attachment was a luxury the frontier didn't allow. Everyone he'd ever known who'd formed deep bonds, family, lovers, even close friends, had eventually lost them to violence, disease, or the cruel indifference of the West. Better to stay unattached, unburdened, and alive. It wasn't that Logan disliked people. He simply didn't trust what happened when you needed them. For 3 years he'd worked cattle drives, trapped in winter, prospected in spring, and drifted through summer, all while keeping emotional entanglements at rifle's length. Loneliness was merely the price of survival. The sudden crack of a rifle shot shattered the silence. Logan's body reacted before his mind could process, diving from the saddle as Diablo reared in panic. His shoulder hit the ground hard, sending pain shooting through his left side as he rolled behind a boulder. Another shot pinged off stone inches from his head, showering him with rock fragments. "Ambush," he hissed, peering around the boulder's edge. Movement on the ridge caught his eye, not the blue uniforms of cavalrymen or the buckskins of white trappers, but the distinct forms of Apache warriors. Women warriors, he realized with surprise. They moved with deadly purpose, rifles aimed, closing in on his position with practiced precision. Logan's hand tightened around his Winchester. He could make a stand, but against superior numbers in a poor defensive position. He counted quickly, at least 7 fighters that he could see. The odds weren't just unfavorable, they were suicidal. "Easy now," a woman's voice called out in surprisingly good English. "Drop the rifle, cowboy, or the next shot won't miss." Logan's jaw tightened. The voice came from directly behind him, impossible unless they'd already flanked his position. He was surrounded. "I said drop it," the voice repeated, closer now. Slowly, Logan placed his Winchester on the ground and raised his hands. "I'm not looking for trouble." "Yet you found it." A young woman stepped into view, her rifle trained steadily at his chest. She couldn't have been older than 22, with striking features that betrayed mixed heritage, Apache in her high cheekbones and obsidian eyes, something European in the slight wave of her blue-black hair that hung in a thick braid over her shoulder. She wore a practical combination of traditional Apache garments and frontier clothing, buckskin leggings and a calico blouse, adorned with intricate beadwork. "I'm just passing through," Logan said carefully, studying her face for any sign of mercy. He found none. "Men are always just passing through before they bring others who stay," she replied coolly. "I am Willow Songbird. You are now a prisoner of the Sisters of the Shadow Water." Logan's mouth went dry as more women emerged from the rocks, all armed, all wearing expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "You've heard of us," Willow observed, noting his reaction. Indeed he had, whispered rumors in saloons about a band of Apache women who'd lost their men to cavalry raids and disease, women who'd refused to surrender to reservations. Instead, they'd formed their own war band, attacking isolated homesteads and patrols before disappearing into the maze-like canyons. Some said they took male prisoners, though opinions differed wildly on the fate of those unfortunates. "Stand up," Willow commanded, slowly. As Logan complied, a sharp pain lanced through his side where he'd hit the ground. He winced, instinctively pressing his hand against his ribs. "He's injured," one of the younger women said in Apache. Willow's eyes narrowed. "It doesn't matter, bind his hands." 2 women approached with rawhide strips, securing his wrists tightly before retrieving his weapons and searching his saddlebags. "What do you want with me?" Logan asked as they confiscated his meager possessions. Willow studied him for a long moment. "Our camp needs a man's labor," she said simply. "You'll work until we decide your usefulness has ended." The words chilled Logan more than any explicit threat. He'd seen what happened to captives when their usefulness ended. "My horse," he began, "will come with us. You Arizona cowboys treat your horses better than your women." Willow turned away, issuing rapid commands in Apache. "Walk," she ordered Logan. "Any attempt to escape will cost you first your feet, then your life." With Diablo's reins in the hands of a stern-faced woman and armed guards surrounding him, Logan began the arduous march deeper into the canyon network. The sun climbed mercilessly higher, baking the exposed skin of his neck and forearms. By midday, thirst clawed at his throat, but no water was offered. They walked for hours, following paths invisible to untrained eyes, climbing slopes so steep that Logan's bound hands made balance nearly impossible. Twice he fell, earning nothing but impatient glares as he struggled back to his feet. The pain in his side grew steadily worse, a sharp stabbing with each breath that suggested cracked ribs. Just when Logan thought he couldn't take another step, they crested a ridge and the canyon opened into a hidden valley. A small stream cut through the center, feeding a patch of surprisingly lush vegetation. Nestled among cottonwood trees stood a cluster of wickiups, dome-shaped dwellings covered with brush and grass, alongside several more permanent structures that showed Spanish influence in their design. Children darted between the buildings, stopping to stare at the newcomer with undisguised curiosity. Older women paused in their work, some pointing, others frowning. Logan counted perhaps 30 people in total, mostly women of various ages, a handful of children, and not a single adult male in sight. "Our home," Willow said simply, though whether with pride or resignation, Logan couldn't tell. "You will stay in the holding pen until we decide your duties." The holding pen proved to be a small, circular structure reinforced with heavy logs sunk deep into the ground, escape-proof, and exposed to the elements save for a small section of roof that provided meager shade. A water skin and clay bowl were tossed in after him, followed by a thin blanket. "Someone will tend your injury," Willow said before turning away. "Try to rest, tomorrow you work." As the wooden door swung shut and a heavy bar dropped into place, Logan sank onto the hard-packed earth, wincing at the pain in his side. The water skin tempted him immediately, but years of frontier discipline held him back. No telling how long it needed to last. Through gaps in the walls, he observed the camp's routine: women preparing meals, repairing weapons, tanning hides, children practicing with small bows. Elderly women teaching younger ones something he couldn't quite see. They functioned with the efficiency of long practice, each person knowing their role. As darkness fell, soft singing drifted through the camp, haunting melodies that spoke of loss and resilience even in a language Logan didn't understand. Despite his predicament, exhaustion pulled him toward sleep. His last conscious thought was of his father's warning: attachments get you killed. Now Logan faced the bitter irony that his deliberate isolation had left him with no one to notice his absence, no one to search when he didn't arrive at the next town. He was truly alone. The next morning came with the screech of the door being unbarred. Willow stood framed in the doorway, the rising sun behind her casting her face in shadow. "You didn't drink," she observed, nodding toward the untouched water skin. "Wasn't sure when I'd get more," Logan admitted, sitting up slowly. Something flickered across her face, perhaps respect. "We don't torture prisoners with thirst, drink. A healer will see you, then you begin work." The healer arrived moments later, an elderly woman with hands gnarled like mesquite roots but surprisingly gentle as she examined his side. She spoke no English but communicated through gestures, applying a pungent paste to his ribs after binding them tightly with strips of cloth. The pain dulled to a manageable ache. Under guard, Logan was led to a partially constructed adobe wall where several women worked mixing mud and straw. A stern-faced woman of perhaps 40 years pointed to a pile of rocks and then to the wall's foundation. "You will carry stones," she said in halting English. "Many stones all day." And so began Logan's captivity. From sunrise to sunset, he hauled rocks, dug irrigation channels, repaired structures, and chopped wood. His hands, already calloused from years of ranch work, grew harder still. His guards remained vigilant, but as days stretched into weeks, they grew less wary, allowing him limited movement around the central area of the camp. He learned their names gradually. The stern taskmaster was Hawk Feather. The ancient healer was great-grandmother, a title rather than a name. The shy girl who brought his meals was Little Deer. And always there was Willow, watching him with those unreadable obsidian eyes, evaluating his worth with each passing day. A month into his captivity, Logan's chance for escape finally came. Left with only a single guard while repairing a distant section of the irrigation system, he calculated he could overpower her, take her weapon, and be on Diablo before the alarm sounded. The mountains to the north would provide cover until he reached the trading post at White River. He tensed, ready to make his move, when shouting erupted from the direction of camp. His guard's head snapped up, listening. More shouting than the distinctive crack of rifles. "Raiders," she hissed, already running toward the camp. Logan hesitated only briefly before following. Rational thought told him to flee in the opposite direction, but something deeper, something he didn't want to examine, pulled him toward the settlement. Perhaps it was only that Diablo was still there, he reasoned. They crested the rise above camp to see chaos below. A band of men, a dozen whites and Mexicans in mismatched clothing, had surrounded the settlement. Even from this distance, Logan recognized the type: deserters, outlaws, men who preyed on isolated communities. 2 wickiups were already ablaze. Women fought fiercely, but they'd been caught unprepared, many without weapons close at hand. Children screamed, running for cover as bullets struck the ground around them. A raider dragged a struggling young woman toward the horses. Logan's guard raised her rifle to fire, but a shot from below caught her in the shoulder, spinning her to the ground. Her weapon fell at Logan's feet. This was his chance in the chaos. He could slip away unnoticed. No one would blame a captive for saving himself. The rifle lay in the dirt. Freedom beckoned from the mountains behind him. A child's scream cut through his thoughts. With a muttered curse, Logan snatched up the rifle and ran down the slope toward camp. His first shot caught a raider squarely in the back as the man aimed at a fleeing grandmother. His second dropped a man attempting to set fire to another wickiup. The element of surprise gave him momentary advantage as raiders turned, confused by gunfire from an unexpected direction. Logan used those precious seconds to reach the nearest cover, a half-completed stone wall, and continued firing methodically, making each shot count. Across the camp, he spotted Willow rallying several women, her own rifle barking death as she directed their defense. Their eyes met briefly across the chaos, surprise in hers, grim determination in his. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. 3 raiders lay dead, 2 wounded, the rest fled, but not without casualties among the tribe. An elderly woman had been killed instantly by a stray bullet. 2 others were wounded, including a 12-year-old girl who'd been grazed across the cheek. As the fighting ended, Logan found himself surrounded once again by armed women, this time with expressions of confusion rather than hostility. "You fought with us," Hawkfeather stated, her rifle still pointed casually in his direction. "Why?" Logan had no answer that made sense even to himself. Instead, he carefully placed his borrowed rifle on the ground. "Someone should see to your wounded." Willow approached, blood splattered across her calico blouse, her eyes never leaving his face. "You had your chance to escape." "Yes, yet you chose to fight alongside your captors." Logan shrugged, wincing at the pain in his freshly aggravated ribs. "Those men would have killed everyone, women, children. So you acted out of what honor?" "Mercy," her voice held genuine curiosity. "Decency, maybe," he replied quietly. "I don't much like men who prey on the defenseless." A small smile, the first he'd seen from her, touched Willow's lips. "We are hardly defenseless, Cowboy." "No," he agreed, "but you were outnumbered." She studied him for a long moment before turning to the others and speaking rapidly in Apache. Heated discussion followed, with frequent glances in Logan's direction. Finally, Willow turned back to him. "The council has decided you will no longer be kept in the holding pen. You have earned a place in the camp." "Not freedom?" Logan asked. "Not yet," she answered honestly, "but a better captivity. Come, your wounds need tending." That evening marked a shift in Logan's status. He was given a small wickiup of his own near the edge of camp, still guarded but with more comfort than the holding pen had offered. His meals improved, and women began to approach him with questions about repairs, construction techniques, even advice on treating Diablo's developing saddle sore. Most significantly, Willow began to seek his company during evenings, initially with the pretext of improving her English, later simply to talk. Seated beside the central fire, they exchanged stories, she of her childhood in a traditional Apache village before soldiers had destroyed it. He of his years drifting from ranch to ranch across Texas and Arizona. "Why do you travel alone?" she asked one night, the firelight catching the blue highlights in her raven hair. At 22, Willow possessed a gravity beyond her years, yet when she relaxed, Logan glimpsed the young woman beneath the leader's mask. "Safer that way," he replied automatically. "Is it?" Today proved otherwise. Logan considered this. "My father always said attachments get you killed out here." And is he still alive, this wise father? There was no mockery in her tone, only genuine inquiry. "No." Died of dysentery in a mining camp when I was 17. Was he alone then? The question struck with unexpected force. Yes, Logan admitted, I was working a cattle drive. Didn't know he was sick until I returned 3 months later. Willow nodded slowly. My father died surrounded by our people, with my mother holding his hand and singing him to the afterlife. The cavalry bullet took him quickly, but he did not die alone. She gazed into the fire. Which death seems better to you? Logan had no answer. As summer heat gave way to fall's cooler embrace, Logan found himself increasingly integrated into the camp's daily life. Children who had once hidden from him now followed him around, pestering him with questions and demanding piggyback rides. Older women nodded respectfully when he passed. Even Hawkfeather had stopped scowling at him constantly. And Willow, their conversations had grown longer, more personal. He found himself looking forward to evenings by the fire, to her insightful questions and surprising humor. When she laughed, a rare but treasured sound, something inside Logan shifted uncomfortably, as though long-dormant parts of himself were awakening. The first frost came early that year, painting the valley white overnight. Logan emerged from his wickiup to find Willow waiting, wrapped in a trade blanket of vibrant reds and blues. Come, she said, I would show you something. She led him to a secluded pool fed by a small waterfall, now rimmed with delicate ice formations that caught the morning sun like faceted diamonds. This is shadow water, she said. It gives our band its name. The water never freezes completely, even in deepest winter. Logan watched steam rise from the dark surface, hot springs beneath. She nodded. My grandmother brought me here after soldiers killed my father. I was angry, ready to seek vengeance alone. She showed me this water, how it remains fluid while surrounded by ice, how it finds its own path through rock. Willow's voice softened. She said survival requires both strength and flexibility. The band became my family when blood relations were lost. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. Willow turned to face him, her expression serious. Logan, the council has decided. With winter approaching, we must move to our protected valley further south. You have proven yourself trustworthy, so I am authorized to offer you a choice. Logan's heart quickened. What choice? You may take your horse and supplies and ride free, or you may come with us no longer as prisoner but as ally. Her dark eyes searched his. It must be decided today. Freedom, the very thing he'd longed for these past months, now presented itself without condition. Yet Logan found himself hesitating. What would my role be if I stayed? We need someone who understands the white man's ways, who can perhaps trade in villages where our presence would bring soldiers. Someone who knows cattle and horses, she paused, and someone who stands with us against raiders and soldiers alike. A protector, Logan said softly. A companion, Willow corrected, then added with unusual vulnerability, my companion if you wished it. The implication hung in the crisp morning air between them. Logan's father's warnings echoed in his mind, attachments get you killed, yet they seemed hollow now, empty cautions from a man who died alone while following his own advice. Before Logan could respond, shouts erupted from the direction of camp. Not again, he thought, already running back alongside Willow. They arrived to find not raiders but cavalry, a full detachment of 20 men, rifles raised as they surrounded the settlement. Women and children were being herded into the central area, some weeping, others stone-faced with dignity. This is Lieutenant James Harrison of the United States Cavalry, announced a mustached officer atop a bay gelding. You people are ordered to surrender and prepare for relocation to San Carlos Reservation. Willow's face hardened as she stepped forward. We have committed no crimes. This land has belonged to our people since before your grandfathers were born. The lieutenant's expression remained impassive. Ma'am, I have my orders. All Apache bands are to be consolidated on the reservation for their own protection and the safety of settlers. Protection, Willow's voice trembled with controlled rage. Like the protection you offered at Camp Grant. Logan winced. The Camp Grant massacre 3 years earlier had seen over 100 peaceful Apache, mostly women and children, slaughtered by militiamen while under supposed army protection. The lieutenant at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. That was an unsanctioned civilian action that the army condemned. This is different. You have 1 hour to gather essential belongings. And if we refuse, Hawkfeather challenged. The officer's hand moved to his holster. Then we have authorization to use necessary force. Logan stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Willow. Lieutenant, might I have a word? The officer looked surprised to see a white man among the Apache. Who are you, a captive? Logan Paxton, I'm a friend to these people. Stockholm Syndrome more likely, muttered one of the soldiers, earning chuckles from his comrades. Logan ignored the comment. Lieutenant, these women have children, elderly. They've harmed no settlers. Surely there's room for negotiation. My orders don't include negotiation, Mr. Paxton. The lieutenant's tone hardened. And frankly, your presence here raises questions about your loyalties. My loyalty is to justice, Logan replied evenly. These people saved my life. They deserve better than to be marched at gunpoint to a reservation where half will die of disease and poor conditions. The lieutenant dismounted, gesturing Logan aside. Look, he said quietly, I understand you feel indebted, but my hands are tied. Washington has decided all Apache belong on reservations, period. The only alternative would be. Would be what? Logan pressed. The officer hesitated. If they weren't Apache. Mining. Meaning if they were, say, legally part of a white settlement with a valid territorial claim, they'd fall under different jurisdiction. He shrugged. But they're not. Logan's mind raced. What if they were? What are you getting at, Paxton? What if I filed a mineral claim here, made this a legal mining camp? The lieutenant frowned. You'd need to register it properly in Tucson. Have some actual mining operation, and even then having Indian employees would raise eyebrows. Not employees, Logan said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. Family. Behind them, Willow watched the exchange intensely, understanding enough English to follow the conversation's direction. The lieutenant's eyebrows rose. You mean? Marriage, Logan confirmed. Under territorial law, if an Indian woman marries a white man, she gains certain protections, doesn't she? Well, yes, technically, she and any children would be considered dependents of a citizen rather than wards of the government. The officer looked skeptical. But you can't marry the whole band. No, Logan agreed, but I could marry their leader, and if I employ the others at my mining camp with proper documentation. The lieutenant ran a hand through his mustache, considering, it's irregular. Washington won't like it. But legal. Potentially, you'd need a registered claim, a real mining operation, not just a front and proper marriage documents. He shook his head. And you'd be taking responsibility for a lot of people, Paxton. Logan met his gaze steadily. I understand the responsibility. I need to consult with my superiors. The lieutenant straightened his jacket. We'll make camp nearby. You have 2 days to show me documentation of a legitimate claim and business, or these people are bound for San Carlos. As the cavalry withdrew to make camp a half-mile downstream, the tribe gathered around Willow and Logan. What did you promise? Hawkfeather demanded. Willow translated the conversation, explaining the potential loophole that might save them from the reservation. When she finished, silence fell over the group. He offers marriage, great-grandmother asked in Apache. Willow looked at Logan. Is that what you propose, marriage to me to save my people? Logan realized the enormity of what he'd suggested. Yes. If you would consider it. The old woman cackled. Always it takes death breathing down our necks to make young people see what is before them. Hawkfeather was more practical. Even with marriage, we need a mining claim. There is no gold here. Not gold, Logan said, but there's clay suitable for pottery and brick making. The territorial office recognizes clay deposits as mineral claims. Excited conversation broke out among the women. A legal claim, a business making pottery and bricks, these were tangible possibilities. Willow remained focused on Logan. You would tie yourself to us, to me, after we took you prisoner. Logan found himself smiling. You gave me a choice this morning, remember, stay or go free. I was about to choose staying when the cavalry arrived. Why? She asked simply. The truth rose to Logan's lips before he could consider its wisdom. Because in these months with your people, I've felt more alive, more connected than in all the years I spent alone. Because watching you lead with both strength and compassion has taught me that my father was wrong. Attachments don't just get you killed, they give you reasons to live. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. And because when you laugh, Willow Songbird, I can imagine building a life around the sound. Color rose in Willow's cheeks, visible even in the fading light. You speak of practical matters, legal protection, mining claims. But a marriage should be more. Yes, Logan agreed, it should. Their eyes held the unspoken question hanging between them. Great-grandmother broke the tension, shoving forward with surprising strength for one so ancient. Enough Munais. We have work to do, the cavalry gives 2 days. We must prepare clay samples, begin constructing a proper kiln. And you too, she jabbed a gnarled finger at both of them, must decide if this is merely strategy or something your hearts truly want. Through the night, the camp worked feverishly. The clay deposits along the stream bank were excavated, samples formed into crude pots and bricks. Logan drafted claim documents on paper provided reluctantly by the lieutenant. Women gathered materials for a demonstration kiln. Just before dawn, exhausted from the preparations, Logan found Willow sitting alone by the dying embers of the central fire. "May I join you?" he asked softly. She nodded, making room on the log she used as a seat. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars fade as eastern sky lightened. Finally, Willow spoke. "My mother told me once that Apache marriage is simpler than white man's marriage. The woman prepares food, the man builds a shelter, they share both, and they are married." She turned to face him. "Is it true?" "Some white marriages begin with elaborate ceremonies, others with just a few words before a judge or preacher," Logan replied. "But at heart, it's about the same thing, choosing to build a life together." Willow's fingers traced patterns in the dirt. "When you spoke of marriage to the lieutenant, was it only strategy?" Logan chose his words carefully. "It began as strategy. A way to protect your people using the white man's own laws." He took a breath. "But that doesn't mean it would be merely strategic for me." "Nor for me," she said so quietly he almost missed it. Hope flickered in Logan's chest. "Willow, these past months have changed me. The man who believed isolation was safety no longer exists. You and your people have shown me what it means to belong somewhere to someone." "You were a good captive," she said with the hint of a smile. "You worked hard, you fought for us when you could have fled. And you were a surprisingly merciful captor," he returned. "You could have killed me that first day. Instead, you gave me the chance to find something I didn't know I was seeking." "And what was that?" "Home," Logan said simply. "Not a place, but people worth fighting for, worth staying for." The first rays of sunlight crested the eastern ridge, bathing them in golden light. Willow's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "If we do this," she said, "it cannot be only for the cavalry's benefit. An Apache wife does not pretend." Logan's heart hammered in his chest. "I wouldn't want pretense between us." She studied their joined hands. "My people need this marriage to avoid the reservation, but I—" "What do you need, Willow?" Logan asked gently. Her dark eyes met his, vulnerability and strength intermingled. "I need to know that when the cavalry leaves, when the danger passes, you will still choose to stay. Not from obligation, but because your heart remains." Logan reached up, brushing a strand of midnight hair from her cheek. "I will stay," he promised, "not for the cavalry or the law, but for you, for us." The smile that bloomed across Willow's face outshone the rising sun. 2 days later, Lieutenant Harrison returned with his detachment to find a transformed camp. A functional clay pit had been excavated, a small kiln constructed, and samples of surprisingly fine pottery arranged for display. Logan presented properly drafted mineral claim documents ready for filing in Tucson, along with a marriage certificate signed by both parties and witnessed by the lieutenant himself in a brief ceremony the previous day. The officer examined everything with barely disguised surprise. "You've been busy, Paxton." "We work well together," Logan replied, standing beside Willow, whose hand remained firmly in his. "So I see," the lieutenant handed back the documents. "I'll register these with the territorial office when we return to Tucson. Technically, you're in compliance with the law." He lowered his voice, "but fair warning, this won't be the end. The Indian Affairs Office won't like this arrangement." "We'll be ready if they come," Logan said confidently. "I hope so." The lieutenant mounted his horse. "Good luck, Mrs. Paxton," he added to Willow with unexpected courtesy before leading his men away. As the dust from the cavalry's departure settled, the reality of their situation sank in. They had won a temporary reprieve, but maintaining their freedom would require vigilance and hard work. The pottery business needed to become genuinely profitable. The marriage needed to be unquestionably real. That evening, as the tribe celebrated their narrow escape with songs and dancing, Logan and Willow slipped away to the shadow water pool, where steam rose into the cool night air. "What happens now?" Logan asked, watching fireflies dance above the dark surface. Now we build, Willow replied, not just kilns and pottery, but a future where my people can live with dignity, neither hiding nor imprisoned on reservations. She looked up at him. It will not be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is, he said, drawing her closer. The women have accepted you, she murmured against his chest. Even Hawk Feather admits you have proven yourself worthy. Logan chuckled, high praise indeed. Willow grew serious. Logan, I must ask something important. In your world, men expect to be leaders of their households, but I am leader of my people. Can you accept a wife who must make decisions for many, not just our family? The question gave him pause, not because the answer was difficult, but because it revealed how deeply she had considered their future together. Willow, I fell in love with the woman who leads with both wisdom and compassion, he said honestly. I would never ask you to be less than who you are. Her eyes widened slightly. You say love so easily now. Because it's true, Logan replied simply. I love you, Willow Songbird Paxton, and I will stand beside you not above or below, but as your partner in whatever comes. She reached up, tracing the outline of his jaw with gentle fingers. When I captured you, I thought I was taking a laborer. Instead, I found a heart that matches my own. Their lips met in a kiss that sealed promises beyond what any document or ceremony could express. Autumn gave way to winter, and winter to spring. The pottery business flourished under Willow's artistic direction and Logan's marketing skills. Regular trips to Tucson and even as far as Albuquerque established trade relationships with merchants impressed by the distinctive designs that blended Apache traditions with practical forms appealing to white settlers. The Sisters of the Shadow Water gradually became known as the Shadow Water Trading Company, their infamous past fading as their legitimate business grew. A few skeptical territorial officials made inspection visits, but found only a well-run operation with proper documentation. Logan and Willow's partnership deepened with each passing month. They complemented each other, his practical frontier knowledge balancing her visionary leadership, her deep connection to the land enriching his once fruitless existence. Together, they expanded the settlement, building proper adobe homes to replace the wickiups, establishing gardens and a small herd of cattle. Children who had known only hiding and fleeing now played openly in the sunshine. Women who had expected to die fighting cavalry now planned for growing old in peace. And Logan, who had once believed detachment meant vulnerability, found instead that love had given him a strength he never imagined possible. One evening, a year after their marriage, Logan returned from a trading journey to find Willow waiting at their doorway, her face alight with a secret joy. Welcome home, husband, she said, taking his hands and placing them gently on her stomach. Your son greets you as well. Logan's heart swelled with emotion as he gathered her in his arms. This woman, once his captor, now his wife, had given him not just a family but a legacy, something his lonely father could never have imagined for him. My father was wrong, he whispered against her hair. Attachments don't get you killed out here. Willow looked up, her dark eyes reflecting the setting sun. What do they do instead? Logan smiled, his heart full beyond measure. They make life worth living, they turn survival into belonging. They make a home in the wilderness. As the sun dipped below the western ridge, casting long shadows across their thriving community, Logan Paxton, once the quintessential lone wolf, stood with his wife at the center of the family he had never sought but had somehow found. In this harsh frontier where so many lost everything, he had gained a truth more precious than gold. That the human heart, like shadow water, remains fluid even when surrounded by ice, finding its way through the hardest stone to create something beautiful and enduring. And in that knowledge he was truly free.